Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. With me on the show this week is Carrie Jeroslow. Carrie is a relationship diversity advocate. She is a best-selling author. She's a podcast host. She is so full of knowledge. You guys are going to love everything she has to say. And you know, relationship diversity, what does that mean? It means that not all relationships need to look the same, but how do we get to a place where, you know, you figure out that this isn't for you, this is for you. Carrie helps people figure out who they are and what they truly want from a relationship. If you are someone who is in a relationship and it's just not doing it for you, this episode is for you. If you're someone who's in a relationship and you love your partner, but there's some things that are missing, this episode is for you. If you're someone who is not in a relationship and you want a relationship, but you don't want it to look exactly like this cookie cutter black and white thing, this episode is for you. We talk also towards the end of the conversation about how making the tough calls, having the difficult talks with your partner about maybe opening the relationship up or desiring different things can really benefit your life, your mental well-being, and it will take your relationship to the next level. We also talk about how sitting with jealousy, working through jealousy also leads to that place where your life, your relationships, and your well-being, they all just get a whole lot fucking better. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Carrie Jeroslow.
This week's conversation.
Carrie Jeroslow, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
Thank you, Dustin. I am great. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. First of all, I'm very happy to have you here. Second of all, this has been in the works for a couple weeks, I think. A really amazing, brilliant friend of both of ours hooked us up so we could do this episode. The audience is going to be better for it, right? That friend is Susan Bratton. I always do this. Our Lord and Savior, Susan Bratton. Yeah.
Susan Bratton.
Yeah, she's a fucking genius, a mad genius at that too. Okay, so what I'd like to do is what we always do on Sex Party, right? For those of you that in the audience that are like, who is this person, right? And they're thinking, I've never seen her. I don't know her work, her brilliant work. I don't know what's going to happen. I hope it's fun. Could you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. All right. So Carrie Jeroslow, I am an author. I'm a podcaster. And more than anything, I like to say I'm a relationship diversity advocate because I believe in relationship diversity. And if you haven't heard about what relationship diversity is, I'm going to tell you, because relationship diversity, the way I defined it is it's all the varied ways that we relate to ourselves and others in our relationships. And we grow up with one thought, one kind of way to be in relationship, which is monogamy. And what I have found is that it's very restrictive. I'm kind of a rebellious person. I've always been rebellious. And I just feel like a monogamous mindset is very restrictive. It doesn't mean monogamy is wrong. It can be very right. And there are also so many other possible structures that you can structure your intimate relationships in. So I love to just kind of break open all the boxes and really look at what is possible. And I talk about it as reimagining relationships. So re-looking at what we've been told, questioning, is it for us, getting us to know ourselves, and then designing a relationship that is most in alignment with who we are.
Yeah, I mean, beautiful, brilliant stuff there, because I think immediately people are like, well, wait a minute. No, I'm not gonna, get into a polyamorous or open relationship with my boyfriend. And I think that's not what you're talking about. I think you're talking more about mindset, right? Like, a mindset that, and you obviously stop me wherever I'm wrong, because I'm wrong quite a bit. it, but and that's half the fun, right?
Yeah.
It's fun to be wrong, guys. Just like what's possible. It's hard to say without making it sound like, oh, we're going to the sex club, but whatever. But a mindset that's like, what is possible when you open your mind to the possibilities of just the outside of the constraints of monogamy, because monogamy is very constrictive.
Well, I will say that I call it default monogamy. Default monogamy is restrictive. Intentional monogamy is not. Intentional monogamy is different. That's me saying, I've looked at everything. I know myself really well, and I am going to intentionally and consciously choose monogamy because for whatever reason, sometimes, people need safety and security of a single relationship. And so it's really just about kind of bringing more consciousness to how we are living. And I think, like, I read a statistic a while back, and it was like 65% of relationships are non-monogamous.
Wow.
But there's a huge percentage of that is affairs and infidelity. So if someone has the possibility to, instead of feeling shameful that I'm just not monogamous, that just doesn't feel natural to me, but yet I'm in a society and a culture that's expecting me to be monogamous, then that is what leads to cheating. But if we can say, like, okay, for me, monogamy doesn't work. It's never worked. And let me just be conscious and intentional and have consensual, open, transparent conversations about it. Then you can really live into the authenticity of who you are without sacrificing relationships and your integrity.
Yeah, because sometimes you're with a partner. Well, hopefully if you're with a partner, it's all the time, but you're with a partner and you love this person. You don't want them to go away. You don't want to leave them, right? But you just have like something, and a great portion of it, I'm sure, is horniness and when whatever. And sometimes you can get that novelty in that relationship if you do a role play thing or like whatever. But when you do these things, these items, when you pretend like, you're the teacher and she's the bad girl in the fucking or whatever in the study hall or whatever, everyone's of consenting age, obviously, or like the cop, you're pulling over all the fucking traditional nurse doctor bullshit. But you're doing those are so like fucking vanilla now, whatever. You do some weird fucking crazy role play and it's fun. Like maybe you're dressing as a scream killer and running down the hallway, whatever you're doing. And then after that, you're like, I still feel unfulfilled. Like I really I have a desire to have sex with someone else. Right. I think that's where most people cheat. I think you're right. I mean, I'm essentially just saying the idiot version of what you just said as the expert. Right. But I think, in societies like, that's not right. That's not cool. Da, 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 da. So, I mean, what does somebody do if they've entered into a relationship that's monogamous because they didn't know any better? They didn't know they could say to their partner, "Hey, I love you, honey, but like, I'd like to sleep with someone else or bring someone else into the bedroom or whatever." And I mean, how does that not end in a shotgun blast against the wall? You know what I mean? Because jealousy is a thing, Right.
Oh, it is a thing. It is a real human emotion. And I would say that for all, I want to just clarify that non-monogamy is not only sexual. So some people want to have more heart-based connections that may or may not be sexual. For many non-monogamous people, it is actually not about the sex. And that's actually a myth, that it is, I just want to sleep with someone. Now there is a part of non-monogamy that is that. Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying that it's not everyone.
Sure.
So I have a podcast called Relationship Diversity Podcast, and I talk a lot about this. Okay, I am in a monogamous relationship. That's what I entered into. And I'm wanting to shift my relationship structure, whether that's open relationships, where that's usually a sexual component to it, whether it is polyamory, which is heart-based connections, whether it is solo poly, like, or relationship anarchy, or there's all these structures. And it takes a lot of consciousness. It takes a lot of patience to come to your partner and say, I've been thinking about something and I want to talk to you about it. It takes a lot of awareness to be able to do it. It is not easy. And I would never tell anyone to go into anything non-monogamous that you're not willing to do a lot of processing and a lot of inner reflection, because it is going to bring up a lot. And we are very programmed. A lot of our beliefs are monogamous based, and it will require you to look, if you're going to want to do it in a way that is consensual, it is going to require you to do a lot of thinking about all of the ways that monogamy and the monogamous mindset comes into actions, thoughts, beliefs, conversations, all of that.
Yeah, well, you mentioned a couple things, and of course the devil in me, which is a big part of my personality, wants to go right to relationship anarchy, right, or anarchist, whatever you said, because hey, I've heard that before. I don't remember where. I've been called a relationship anarchist, but I don't think they were referring to what you're referring, or a relationship arsonist. Someone called me a relationship arsonist. I'm like, that's the coolest insult I've ever gotten. Yeah, no, I've had, there's been some rough stuff. That was all my fault. But,
we've all been there.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. What is relationship anarchy? This is fascinating. And then I'm going to jump back to what you said, but I want to make sure we didn't lose that.
Yeah. So there's the way that I know relationship anarchy is that all of the relationships are individual. So let's say I have several different relationships. None is, hierarchical. So none is like a primary relationship. None are secondary. Each relationship in and of itself has its own kind of structure, not based on any of the other relationships.
Wow. And why who coined that? Was that a Russell Brand term or what?
I don't know. I don't know who coined relationship anarchy. There's been a lot of discussions about writing the relationship escalator, which is just like this, we meet someone, we date, we move in together, we get married, and that kind of going on the relationship escalator. So relationship anarchy says, I'm not going to go on that relationship escalator. So one, week I may want to sleep with someone. The next week I may not. I'm going to really check in with myself. It requires huge self-awareness to go, where am I right now? And how am I going to show up in this interaction with this person on this day?
Well, when you said, every relationship has its own structure, has its own sort of build, and it's different from all the other relationships, but it's called relationship anarchy. I imagined like a one partner, one person, man or woman, with 7 or 8 partners around them, and everyone screaming and holding a weapon or a chair or something, because I feel like that's a lot. Okay, and the thing that people don't, whether it's emotional, sexual, whatever, right? You might have a partner you just cuddle with, maybe. I don't know, right?
Yeah,
it's all
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing about relationship diversity is that there's even platonic partnerships or non-categorical relationships or platonic life partners or there's just so much. And I even like to find the gold within these labels. So I even talk about being single, which has a lot of myths and a lot of judgments about people who choose to be single. And I talk about it with the word solo amory, that I am choosing consciously to be single. And that is how I want to live my life. That is aligned with my values and my priorities. And so there's just this huge spectrum of how we show up. And so the way I talk about it is to know yourself, to know what you want. So the most important relationship should be with yourself, knowing who am I? And that this changes and evolves. So who I was at 20 years old and what I needed at 20 years old is very different than what I need right now, as I've just turned 54. So it's like, that's like a 34-year difference. I've grown, I've evolved, I've had so many experiences. My priorities have totally shifted. And so to really be intentional with where I am in this moment, in this chapter of my life, and then communicating that to the people that I am in relationship with.
Yeah. And so that part of it is fascinating, because I do think that most people feel a change in their late 20s going into their 30s, and more so like probably into their 40s, where they know they need something, but they're not sure what exactly it is, kind of. And also they care less about societal norms. But there's nobody like you who's just like, like who do these people have? Their fucking parents to look at, like that, you know what I mean? Like, and here you are, but like, how do they find you? And it's like, oh, whatever. But I think with the internet and Instagram and, all of the things that, and TikTok, especially TikTok, Jesus, that's what, I mean, that when they don't censor you, what a fucking gift that is. And they can be like, oh, okay. Like that, it doesn't have to fit inside this thing. It doesn't have to, whatever. But I think, middle America, we're still missing the mark there, because that of this stuff, right? Like, I don't know if it's the church, I don't know if it's the fucking cereal companies, I don't know who the fuck is behind this, but like who is still pushing societal norms? I mean, this is a sticky one, but
this is a sticky one. This is a very sticky one,
and we can go there. And I just want to say, like, because it's red versus blue right now, and well, it always is, but we're going into an election thing, and like, listen, if you're someone who votes a certain way, you're still welcome here. It doesn't matter what I say or who the fuck I vote for, whatever. Everyone is welcome here. I just want to say that, right? But that being said, there tends to be more restriction on one side of the aisle than the other. And then these things are used as like weapons, and America is dying and all these things. And I think, so the politicians obviously are propagating these ideas of, you have to have a wife, you got to be married before 30. If she's not pregnant before 30, she's useless, and like all these things. But then on the relationship side, it's like, they don't fucking, regardless of what they're doing in their personal life, they're pushing this agenda like it's one partner for one partner. You got to have 2.5 kids, and you have to have 3 mortgages, and you have to have sex like once a month, and like all these things.
It's hysterical. It is, because not hysterical, like actually tragically hysterical.
It's like crying hysterical.
Well, because there's a lot of hypocrisy going on. And I really feel, and this is why I feel very inspired about relationship diversity, because all of those rules that fit you into a box is creating people just feeling like a failure in their relationships. I'm not doing it right. And what relationship diversity says, like, because I don't think people really talk about what's really going on in their relationships. If you were to open the bedroom door or open the house door and really look at what is going on, I think we would see a very different story. And, I just think that there are very like fundamentally different beliefs of what is family values and all of that. But really, I feel like people who are living authentically in their truth and are owning who they are kind of scary to people who want it to fit into a box.
Yeah.
And we're seeing the result and how I think scared conservative America is about people living their truth and people saying, this is just who I am.
Right.
So there's a lot of pushback, but I'm hopeful because I've been in this relationship diversity field for, almost 2 years, and I am seeing shifts. I mean, there are laws being passed to support and non-discrimination laws in 4 cities right now, non-discrimination against non-monogamy.
Wow.
So things are changing, and there's many advocacy committees, who are advocating for relationship diversity. So it's happening, and I don't think it's going to go back.
No, I think that's, I mean, I wasn't even aware that they were passing anti-discrimination for non-monogamous people or whatever. I mean, what cities are those in? Like, do you know, like offhand or?
Yeah, Berkeley, Oakland, and Somerset, Massachusetts. And there's one more that is not coming to me, but there are Open, which is an organization that is working to help with these, and they're actually doing a week of visibility for relationship diversity, for non-monogamy. I mean, this is happening, and there are studies that have come out that said 25% of Americans would consider something other than monogamy. There are articles coming out in things like the Wall Street Journal, Cosmopolitan, like big Time magazine. Like, this is here to stay. And I think, because there's been many waves, because I've talked to a lot of people who have been in relationship diversity for 20 years, and it's kind of like waved like this, but I think we're on a spike, which is good.
Yeah. And do you think the fucking pandemic had anything to do with this?
Well, I think the pandemic had a lot to do with breaking up, and a lot of people saying, like, this is not working for me. If this isn't working for me, what could work for me? So I definitely think that had a lot to do with it. That had a lot of people saying, you know what? I could distract myself with work and going out and all that kind of shit, but not anymore. I cannot do that. This is not working.
Well, okay. So do you think it was a notion of, I can't stand this guy. I haven't been in the house. He hasn't taken a shower, like too much Xbox. I got to get out of here, or I'm just going to go nuts. And so they start texting like some dude or whatever. Or do you think it was like, holy shit, life is short. This is monumental. 2 years of this bullshit. I need to start living. If it's not my truth, it better be close. Like, you know, that kind of thing. What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think it was both?
I personally think it's both.
Okay.
I personally think it was both. I think it was where maybe, I don't know, something as, I think like leaving laundry on the floor or something is just like, you know, a surface thing for something that's probably deeper. But I'm feeling like a lot of people we're just realizing that communication is a problem, but we are able to super distract ourselves by going out into the world. Mm-hmm. And that compatibility really came into question. Compatibility, life goals, you know, what people want in life. And I do think that there was kind of a belief of life is too short. Life is too short to live in a life that is not working for me.
Yeah. And back to like, who's at fault for this? Cause whatever. Right. But, so we touched on government, of course, you know, but like the church, sure, I'm sure has a hand, and a big hand, and a big evil hand in all of this stuff. But then like, when you look at like corporations, it's an odd thing, because we saw the blow up with Bud Light over like transgender and LGBTQ, and now they're like, oh, sorry, you know, and Kid Rock's like, oh, I'm sorry, I shot up those cans, and what, I'm like, fucking idiot, like, or whatever, like, you know, like all of that, right? But you would think, like, just from a sales perspective, you would think that some of these brands would be like, hey, if more people are getting together, that's more turkey sausages and condoms we can sell to them. You'd think that more brands would embrace it. So if it's not the corporations and the brands and like whatever, who else is propagating all this fucking nonsense about you must?
Well, you can go back to when you're 4 years old and look at Disney movies. I mean, Disney movies, Meet My Prince Charming, Live Happily Ever After. I mean, these are like things that are just infiltrated into our minds without us even knowing it. We sit and we're like, oh my gosh, I want to show my child the entire Disney collection. And it's all about meeting that one person and falling in love. And, you know, it puts a lot of pressure on kids growing up and then experiencing, you know, this expectation that is just really not based in reality. Yes, can you find your Prince Charming? Yes, can you fall in love? Yes, it can happen. And there's a lot of other shit that happens in the path of that. So like it's in all of the movies, it's in just so much programming. So, you know, it's just indoctrinated. And until we actually question it, we won't break free of it.
Yeah, no, I think, and that's what I think we're trying to do that. And we set the table really nicely here in this one to question the shit out of it, which I love questioning societal norms. So you're in the right place.
Too.
I'm in the right place. So, okay. So let's say, I mean, how does someone know for sure, right? Whether they want to be monogamous, solo amory, polyamory. Let's just say they're listening to this and they're like, fuck, like,
how do I figure it out?
I have this feeling here. I have this feeling there, but no, I love my girlfriend or boyfriend or boyfriends or whatever, but they don't know, you know, we had that wild night where we went after dinner and like, you know, we made out with my friend and that's as far as it's gone or something. Right. But they're like, wait a minute, what if I am a little different? What if I desire things that are a little different sometimes? Like, how do they really, I mean, there's not like a fucking online test or anything, but I mean, there's probably is. Yeah, but we're not doing the BuzzFeed shit.
I would say at the Bonding Project, which is at thebondingproject.com, I work on their podcast. They actually have a test for exactly that reason. So it was developed by a woman who like was sick of dating and asking all of these questions to the people that she dated. And so there's actually this test that you can take that looks at different aspects of life. So it looks at sexual, it looks at romantic relationships, it looks at cohabitating, finances. And so you actually get to see, like, in what areas do I like to be monogamous? In what areas am I interested in opening things up? In what areas do I want to be single or solo amorous? So like for me, I'll say, I am an introvert and I have got to have time on my own. If I am nonstop with other people, it does not work for me. So how did I get to know that about myself? Well, I guess by the third or fourth time being on a family vacation where I had no break and I just like lost it, I was like, oh, why is that happening? Oh, because I need time on my own. This is just like questioning why, instead of just doing something and reacting, if you do something, questioning, like, why am I doing that? So I realized, oh, I need time on my own. So that's a part of me that's solo amorous, right? I need time on my own. I needed to center. I needed to kind of like, I'm an empath. I take on other people's shit all the time. I need to like clean out my energy and just like figure out what is going on with me. So I'm a huge advocate of self-care. Any kind of thing that you can do to connect with yourself, journal, quieting your mind, going on a hike, singing a song, whatever it is, that can be like, what is going on with Carrie today?
Right.
And then like really looking at like, where do I find my happiness? Where do I feel happy in a crowd of people? Do I feel happy loving my best friend and loving my, this person and loving this person? Does that like turn me on and get me really excited for life? Do I like to have conversations about what my feelings are? Do I not? So like really asking yourself these questions. And I have 100 episodes of my podcast that you can listen to start that process of really getting to know yourself. And really when you know yourself and kind of develop that relationship with yourself, all of your relationships will be better. Not just if you're choosing to be single or even solo poly. I just did an episode that released today about solo poly. And those are people who like heartfelt connections, but also like their highest, biggest value is autonomy. And so there's this like term called solo polyamory. So I can have multiple connections, but I also have my own finances. I live on my own, and then people can develop all of that in different ways. That's what I love about relationship diversity. People can say, well, I like to have my own finances, but I like to live with people. So I like to just, have my relationships be all their own relationships, but I like to, just g- centering in on what is important to you. What are
Right.
your values? What are your priorities?
Well, I mean, there's tons of fascinating things there, and some of them I'll try to poke at, and we'll see what pops out. I think, it's not all of this. The whole point is it's really not black and white, and we were meant to live in a black and white world. No, I'm not meant, but meant by some people to put us in a black and white world because it just seems simpler, right? And so we've all sort of been kind of brainwashed on a lot of this stuff and indoctrinated into this, I Love Lucy, shout out to I Love Lucy. I love that show, but I don't want to live in that world necessarily. And so how old am I? I don't know. What that was probably a reference. People are like, what the fuck? Listen, I
got you.
I love classic film and classic television. Leave me alone. Whatever.
You, Dustin. You do
yeah.
you.
Yeah, guys, get off my back. No one's fucking saying a word, whatever, right? But the simpleton bullshit, right? Where it's like Stepford wife, briefcase husband, with like I said, the 2.5 kids in the suburbs. That is fucked, right? And so we're coming up in this, and then you're saying all these things that are not black, they're not white, they're actually pretty gray, and there's so many subtle levels of grayness. And so, I mean, you just illuminated a lot of them, but like, what does somebody do? Because let's be real, like, even though people are getting a bit more open-minded, getting a bit more wilder. I don't know if you've been out to any of the bars lately, but people are wild out there, and I fucking love it. It's great. It's really great. And, that stuff's catching on, but more likely than not, if you're someone who is solo poly, or you're looking for a polyamorous thing, or you're just looking to, like, I don't know, a mixture of both, something so we don't have a term for yet, right? You're going to come across some normies on Bumble. You're going to come across, right? You're going to come across some normies everywhere. And they might be like, oh yeah, I heard about that on this podcast. That sounds cool and open-minded and new age and whatever. But they're more likely than not, especially the dudes. The dudes are a problem, because if a woman says, oh, fucking bullshit, or whatever. So, sorry guys, it's just the truth. The fucking statistics don't lie. And so what is someone to do, man or woman, when they are someone who is open-minded and they're open to experiences, they're open to whatever, and they're trying to date / whatever in a world that is just full, still, I would say, 70-80% of civilian normie people that aren't into this stuff.
Yeah. The biggest thing that I tell people is to find your community. Find your community, because I will assure you that there is a community for all of this, different communities. I don't have a community, but you can get in touch with me and I could pretty much give you a community for almost anyone, and good ones led by good people. Because that's the thing, is there are communities out there where they're, I don't think are super supportive. Mm-hmm. And there are communities that are very loving, very accepting, where you can meet other people that are not just dating apps, although there are, diverse dating apps. Other than I've never been on a dating app, thank goodness, as of this moment, knock on wood, I've never had to. But at the same time, I know there are some good non-monogamous related dating apps, ways to meet people. But I think the best way is through community. If you go on to Plaura, Plaura, it used to be called Bloom. That is an incredible platform that supports all this kind of stuff, that has classes online and in person. And it's about kind of meeting people who are more open-minded. Mm. And I will assure you, even in middle America, there are those places. It's kind of shocking to me when I started to interview people about all different kinds of lifestyles, let's just say swinging lifestyles, and they live in middle America, and they're like, yeah, I'm working on an event that has going to have thousands of people. It's just about, opening your mind to it. And once you start going down the rabbit hole, I will assure you there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So finding community, I think, is the most important, because I really know the feeling of feeling different, And it's hard. It makes it harder because it takes a lot of courage to step out of, this normal, which I don't know how normal it is, but right now it's like more of the traditional relationships. It takes a lot of fucking courage. It's scary.
Yeah.
And I have found, and I have talked to a lot of people, that when you find community, it helps support your journey.
Yeah, I mean, you get that support, you get that backup, and you can reach out to somebody. Has this ever happened to you? This fucking guy yelled at me and said this or whatever. I mean, I think that's awesome. Especially, you're right, like in the world that we live in today, and Sex Party, this podcast I started, has been such a rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole of all rabbit holes.
Yeah.
I mean, all of my views, which were pretty crazy and fun and very open-minded. Like, I'm even more and whatever. So yeah, I mean, I'm here in Chicago, and like, I had no idea that the building behind the bar, next to the gym I work out at every day, was having sex parties like 4 nights a week and whatever. And a lot of people have reached out to me in the DMs on Instagram and on Facebook, and they're like, yeah, my husband and I have been like having sex, we swing, we do whatever. I'm like, and I was like, at one point I was like, this is just like happening and no one's talking about it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I interviewed a woman on my podcast about play parties, and she was like, I will assure you that a lot of churchgoers, a lot of very conservative Christians specifically, go to these play parties.
Hell yeah.
It happens. And this is another inspiration of mine, is to just take the shame out of it. Like, there's so much shame that is tied to living alternatively.
Yeah.
And like, I went to, just speaking to the community aspect, I went to this get together that was a non-monogamous or relationship diversity get together. And it was like a whole weekend, and it was so freeing to just like say, this is who I am. There was no hiding. It was just like, this is who you are. Oh, this is what you're struggling with. Oh, this is what I'm struggling with. Oh, this is how you express your relationship. This is how I express my relationship. And it was just like, oh, that's really interesting. I want to learn more. Not like, you do what? Ooh.
Yeah.
It was so freeing. It was so great. And I just wish like that, and I'm just holding the vision of a time where we can do that more than not. Yes, there are places that are not safe to do that. And understanding that is really important. Saying, do I feel safe in this situation or do I not?
Mm-hmm.
And giving yourself the opportunity to be in a safe space, to be able to talk openly, is so awesome.
Well, before I move on to the next set of things that are just sort of coming to my mind now, I mean, I love like where this conversation is going, and I'm fucking fascinated, and you are awesome. And so I just feel like there's some areas we're going to push into now that I'm very curious about, right? But before we do that, like the test you talked about from the bonding
project.
Is that available for people to take online?
Yeah, you can go to the bondingproject.com, bondingproject.com.
Okay, so I will link that too, because I think people are like, oh my God, I want to know what I am. And so there you go, guys. I'll link it. Okay, so when people like come to you, is it men mainly? Is it women mainly? Is it couples? This is I really want to know.
So I don't know if it's because I'm this demographic, but I get mostly women.
Really?
Mostly women want to open their relationship.
Okay.
They're not feeling fulfilled in their monogamous relationship, and they want feedback on how they can open their relationship successfully.
Without losing their partner.
Without losing, most of the times, without losing their partner.
Most of the time.
Well, there are times. I mean, that's the thing is a lot of people blame non-monogamy for breaking up marriages. It very rarely is that. Now, there are the times when one wants to open and one doesn't. That is, a coming to. You have to decide, like, can we make it work? There's this whole structure called monopoly, where one person is monogamous and one person is polyamorous. And the person who's monogamous goes into their hobbies and develops like these, parts of themselves that they want to explore, while the other person is polyamorous. And it works for some people. Would it work for me? I don't know. I don't know that it would. And that's okay. That's me. But it does work for some people. It works really well for some people.
Yeah. I mean, and so when the women come to you, is it they're unsatisfied sexually, and on top of that, they're maybe not getting the support from the partner, and like he is leaving or they are leaving their laundry around. There's like dishes in the sink. I keep saying he because I just assume, right? See, I'm fucking programmed.
We all are.
Yeah, they are not into the same, they're not binging, 24 together or whatever it is. And this person's already alone and they feel like, hey, couldn't hurt. Like it has to be more than, because we said like monogamy, non-monogamy, solo, anything. It doesn't have to mean just sex, right? But sex is a big part of it. So is it all of those things? Is it more one than the other?
It is all of those things. I think that there are, for some people who have been in longer term relationships or marriages, that there is an excitement and a newness to new sexual connections. I find a lot of people, though, it's about wanting emotional intimacy, really, specifically for women, really wanting emotional intimacy. Wanting someone who will kind of open their heart to them. And I think also there are women who kind of are in that like day-to-day life and want to, have more, want to feel like a woman, not like a mother, like a woman. They want to feel like, whether that comes through sexual intimacy or emotional intimacy, or just a newness. I found that some people meet someone and that is the inspiration for wanting to open. So it's not just about, this is something I'm thinking about doing and then doing it. But like, no, I've actually met someone who I really feel connected to, but I also don't want to let my other relationship go. So how can we make this work? So kind of all of those.
Yeah, I mean, because there is so much, I feel like in the quote unquote traditional relationship space, there is a lot that just goes by the wayside after a while. People get comfortable. That's what people always term it. And it's like you stop doing those things you did in the beginning, but then I don't think it's just that. I think that then potentially, and again, I'm just a fucking podcast guy. You're the expert. That's why you're here. But in my estimation, it's like those things, they used to do this and they're not doing it anymore. So I don't feel whatever. But then it also, that sort of alerts you to some other needs, some greater, maybe you need greater. And then you're like, oh shit. I kind of am like thinking about other people or the idea of other people and whatever. And I think you bring up a really excellent point too, that people blame social media and non-monogamy for ruining relationships and all these things. Guys, and I'll die on this hill. I hope I die on this hill, really, truly, is that social media is not the access and availability of other people and connection on social media has nothing to do with it. Okay. My grandfather was putting personal ads in every paper in a 200-mile radius to go cheat on his wives, right? People will find a way. It does not matter. Yeah. So non-monogamy and acceptance of non-monogamy on any level, and social media has nothing to do with destroying relationships.
No, and I will tell you, and I want to tell everyone who is listening, do not open your relationship if you need to fix it. It's like, don't have a baby to fix your relationship. No, I have seen that fail over and over and over again. If there are really foundational problems in your relationship, non-monogamy will highlight it and blast it right to you. And usually relationships that have problems and open up crash and burn. It happens so much. I've seen it so much. So if you're wanting to, that's not to say that you can only open your relationship if let's say it's like a monogamous relationship, if that relationship is solid and like super healthy, because we've all got shit to work on in our relationships. Yeah. Let's be real. Okay. We all have shit to work on in our relationships. There is no perfect relationship. That is a fallacy.
Yeah, that's the number, and that's the number one no. Like that's like the cardinal rule is you don't have a baby to save a relationship. You don't open your relationship to save the relationship. You just have to fucking work on your relationship. Those things breed resentment, regret, and breakups, and divorce and whatever. Yes. And so that I'm glad that you said that, because it's like a please do not, guys, do not do that. Right. That's the and because a lot of people. Oh man, I'm like going in my head. Do I want to tell this story or not? But like, we'll just say a lot of people will open their relationship, and then sometimes, like, which is the greatest fear of everybody listening right now, is they open the relationship and then that person bolts with the new person, right? And so that happens, but I think it happens more often than not when the relationship is already fucked and you guys didn't put the fucking Flex Seal tape over it a little bit at least, and like then try to work out those fractures, right? Because when you're really with somebody and first of all, it's a risk. It can happen, right?
Totally a risk. Yes.
That's the risk you take. But the more solid your relationship is, the more in love you really are, and you can recognize it and talk about it, the less the risk, I would say.
And the more willing you are to do your own work, to take radical responsibility, look at your shit, do your work, and have open communication with your partner. It's like I said before, it's not for the faint at heart, And the other thing that I do want to say that I've seen is this thing like in dating where people, I'm not going to focus it on the dudes, but people say, "Oh, I'm polyamorous," but they're doing it. They're like kind of hanging it over as like, that's why I'm just going to sleep around because I'm poly. And that is not that's why people put the ethical and the consensual kind of in front of non-monogamy, although there's pushback of definitely like, why do we have to label non-monogamy? We don't label monogamy. But there is something to it being ethical and consensual and taking other people's like feelings into consideration and having open-hearted conversations are really important. It's not just like, I mean, there's a point where it's like kind of, this is who I am and you can choose to be with me or not, but that's very different than this is who I am. So like, if you want to be with me, if you want to fuck me, like you got to just accept who I am. That's very different than this is who I am. I want you to know about it. This is something that's really important to me. I want to give you the out if this does not work for you. That's like very different conversations, right?
No, totally. Yeah. And the other thing too, that I think is really, really important is just like the fact that people are scared to have those conversations. You know what I mean? They're just terrified. And so
they're scary. Yeah. I get it. They are scary. I mean, opening your heart to someone is very scary. And so like, I just want to say that, yes, it is. And that's okay. And it is the way in. It's like, it's the way into something that's going to go deeper and not stay on the surface.
So is it a rip the Band-Aid off, have the conversation about whatever it is? Or like, how do you advise somebody how do you advise your clients, right? These women that are coming to you mainly that they want something different. And they're afraid to talk to the partner or even bring their partner to the session with you, right? Like what advice do you give with the fear component, because we talk about fear a lot on the show. There's fear and sex and love and dating, and it's all related. And so I think fear holds a lot of us back. So I mean, what's the move there?
So I'm going to talk about it in terms of like, so because there's some women who really don't feel safe having this kind of conversation, like really like don't feel safe and legitimately don't feel safe. So
like, can you talk to him for me?
Yeah, I'm not gonna, I mean, at that point, we're talking about a bigger issue, and opening a relationship is really not, I don't think, the healthiest movement forward. If we're scared to have that conversation from like, I'm scared for either my safety, my emotional safety, my mental safety, then there are bigger issues. And I refer those people out.
Yeah.
If someone's like, well, you know, I've never talked to my husband like this before. I don't know how to even open this conversation. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And I have an episode that's like 3 things to think about before starting this conversation. Is one, you want to think about like why this is important to you, what's going on. You really want to be as grounded as you can into why this is something you want to explore. 2, you want to look at your partner and like, how is the best way to bring difficult conversations up? Okay. Like my husband, I love him, but morning, not a good time. Before morning coffee, not a good time.
Yeah.
What works for my husband is to say, I have something I'd like to talk to you about. Could you let me know when you're in a place to have a kind of uninterrupted discussion? So I kind of like drop it like that. And I think that some people, you know, some like, let's say guys, if a woman's bringing that up, will say like, I need to know, is everything okay? What's going on? And then maybe it is having the conversation right now, but there may be something about like saying, well, this is something I've been exploring and I'd like to open this conversation with you. Okay. So when I went to my husband, I said, you know, I've met someone and I really have feelings and I don't know what to do with these feelings. So kind of like saying like keeping it with what I'm feeling, what's going on with me. And it was really a challenging conversation. And it takes going through the fire to get out on the other end, and hopefully with as little burns as possible. But I think like understanding who you are why you want to do it, and then really looking at your partner and saying, when is this partner, like, how does this partner deal with big information? And what's the best way that this partner can be in the best place to receive this information? And then I also like to tell people to have a lot of resources, to have podcasts, because here's one thing to remember is most likely, let's just say in this situation, the woman has been thinking about this for a long time. And this is the first that their partner has been hearing about it, has heard about it. So it's going to take time for them to be like, wait, what? Like, this is not something I've been expecting. So having resources, giving space, like, are they the kind of person that processes with space? Are they the kind of person that processes through talking it out? So kind of like dissecting like your partner, what should I expect? What should I be thinking about? When are they best to have this kind of conversation? And then arming yourself with resources. They may not want those resources right away. So honoring that. They may be like, whoa, this is just too much, because most likely a lot of fear will come up of like, I'm not enough. All these things that are probably things that would be there, whether you brought it up or not. I'm not enough. I'm not, good enough. What am I not giving this person? So that's like just the beginning. It's very nuanced and it's very complex.
Yeah, for sure. And but that's beautiful, and I truly appreciate you saying all of that, because that's and the thing about giving them space, like no, honey, go listen to this podcast. I swear. Like that's not going to work if they're not in receiving mode, right? And I think this sort of approach, right, it lends itself to the sexual side, or maybe not just the sexual, but the sexual side and the emotional side of being with another partner while you have a partner, because that's the same way you would approach the jealousy that maybe you would have, he would have, they would have, whatever. You need to sit with it and like instead of like throwing the fucking, jars against the wall or banging the refrigerator 18 times passive aggressively, you really want to like, and this is only what I know, and please expand on it. Cause again, podcast idiot, relationship expert over there. And so I think you have to sit with the jealousy and be like, why am I jealous? What about me is making me jealous? So
Dustin, you're doing a great job. Exactly. Exactly. I have an episode about jealousy, specifically saying there is always something underneath the jealousy. The jealousy is an important emotion.
Yeah.
And it's important to get very intimate with those feelings. Where do I feel jealousy in my body? What does it bring up? What fears do I bring up? But so many people stop at the jealousy. And I hear that all the time. I couldn't do that, but I'd be too jealous. But there's actually a gold mine underneath the jealousy. Doesn't make it easy. Make it easy. But there is a gold mine of like, oh my God, there's all this insecurity that I have just pushed down. So there's just like this beautiful gold mine underneath it. If you could just go like one level under that jealousy.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Is like people are looking for this magic well. There it is, right? If you can sit with the jealousy and just, but like really kind of like figure out, why am I jealous? Why does this hurt? What about me is making this hurt so badly?
Yeah.
Not only do you start to discover who you really are, which then can allow you to make incredibly greater decisions about your life and well-being, but there's also like this river of like pleasure and joy that you're like, oh my God, this is down here the whole fucking time and no one told me. So that right there, I think is really, really important,
You know what? You do know more than you're letting on to, Dustin.
Well, I keep my cards close to the vest, whatever.
You can't hide it from me.
No, that's great. While we're here on this topic, like what do you think of the idea of people want to open their relationship starting with a paid, non-connected sex worker or emotional worker instead? Because I've had a lot of people say, the key that really brings jealousy down is if we hire a sex worker, to have sex with, or like some sort of emotional surrogate that like, whatever, you pay someone after the experience is over, they leave, there's no connection, right? Whether it's a man, a woman, whomever, right? Doesn't matter, but you both get, or the people get what they want, but there's no emotional connection because it's a paid experience. What are our thoughts on this?
I think that is absolutely an option.
Okay.
And again, it's about knowing yourself to know if that would work. That would never have worked for me.
Okay.
That would never have worked for me.
Why not?
Because I thrive on heart connections.
Okay.
I thrive on that. That like lights me up. And I'm not really the kind of person that would that resonates with swinging. It's just not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I could fall in love. And you know what? Love to me is so sexy. It's such a turn on.
Sure.
And so it's about, but that's me. But there could be someone who's like, you know what? I'm really nervous about this. So let's try this and see how that feels.
Yeah.
So I think like it's again about knowing who you are to know what will work for you. And there's also a part of it that is just trial and error. That is going to be trial and error. That is going to be like, well, we tried that. Okay. I say this like, this is something that I tried that I was like, I want to try it. I don't know if I like it. And it was like a cuddle puddle. And I was like, I kind of want to try it. And you know what? I realized like, that's not for me. And I was like, well, I wouldn't have known unless I tried it. But I kind of have like a personal space kind of thing. And I want to, again, like I just said, I want to feel love and connection and resonance. And I just like didn't vibe in that, but I would not have known. So that was a relatively low risk thing to try.
Yeah.
And I know that there are higher risk things. So I think it's about having conversations, understanding that there is a trial and error aspect of it, tuning into what you really want and need. And that takes time together as a couple, but also individually. And then being able to find, I guess, like the gifts of uncomfortable emotions, because there's going to be that. There just is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's okay.
No, totally. I think that's, I think that the uncomfortable stuff can be really, really beautiful. And especially when you're on the other side of it and it comes around again, you're like, oh, I've fucking done this before. I got this. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Putting yourself out there in any way, doing a podcast, doing work like yourself, like, you go look at my comments on the sex party page. They're not fun. They're very, and I'm like, bring it on, little incel boys. Like I'm like really
better for the algorithm, right?
Yeah. Well, and some I've like tricked my brain into like that's a compliment, Dustin, when it's not. It's like, I'll fucking shoot you or whatever. And I'm like, they really do say things like that. And I'm like, man, I got an emotional reaction, and I'm like, whatever. So yeah, I mean, going back to what I said, like bringing like a sex worker in or like an emotional worker in, because I've heard of that, like surrogate stuff. It could be a really good introductory step, because I think, you trial and error, people are thinking like they're gonna try to have an emotional connection with a friend or someone that works in the neighborhood that they see all the time and flirt with at the donut shop and whatever. And it's like, well, we can't talk to Janine again. That was weird, or whatever.
Right. And I do want to say, Dustin, there are risks, but there are risks for anything. You can be in a monogamous relationship. There is a risk that in fact, there is probably more risk that people will cheat and do it in a not respectful way. There are risks in every part of life. And when people really like focus in on non-monogamy and the risk that only can come from that, it's not true. So yes, there are risks. Yes, absolutely. You could open your relationship and your partner could fall in love and your partner could decide to be with that person. That actually, yes, that can happen. So if you are not willing to take that risk, then again, it might not be something you want to try. And that's okay. That's okay. It really is. And so, yeah, there's lots that could happen.
Yeah.
But that could happen in life, in anything in life, I think.
Yeah. And that totally like goes back to Jim Carrey, like gave a commencement speech, and I'm going to fucking botch the quote, but whatever. It's my show. I can do that. I apologize. But he said something along the lines of like, go for it, whatever it is, fucking go for it, because you can fail hard at what you don't even want to be doing by playing it safe, or you could take this enormous risk at what you do want to. What feels better to fail in? Some fucking whatever that's monotonous and shitty, or failing at something that you really, really fucking love. And that's what I fucking love about stuff like this and life and even like just like whatever you're afraid of, quitting your job, fucking starting a podcast, fucking whatever. It's all in that same like love, passion vein. And on that notion, I have 3 more things for you, and then I promise you can leave the party. I'll let you go. Right. But before we get there, me too. I want to ask, like, and you can be like, no, I'm not. Next, don't ask me that or whatever. But what does your relationship look like? Are you in a non-monogamous? Are you solo poly? I mean, what's going on in your relationship? Because I think that's important.
I am in a polyamorous relationship. So I have my husband. We've been together 17 years. We have children together. And I have another partner I've been with for 4 years. And there's been a lot of ups and downs, but I'll tell you that I feel so fulfilled because I am a complex person. I always have been. My mom has always said, like, have always been rebellious. You always had a mind of your own. Yeah. And I mean, I couldn't do this without that. But I'm complex, and I just don't think that I can get everything I need from one person. And that's okay. Like, that's actually, I think, healthier than trying to get everything from one person. And my husband feels the same, and he has another partner, and it's really actually quite lovely. Doesn't mean that there's not hard emotions and things that come up, but I feel like off the hook in ways that he wished I would show up in when we were monogamous, that I don't really love it. Like he's he loves like science and going to museums and things like that. It's fun. I could have fun with that, but it's not my like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. But his other partner does. And how wonderful is that? Like, I actually feel a really strong sense of compersion and excitement that he gets to do that with someone who really wants to do that as well.
Yeah.
And so it's, it's been a journey, but it takes a lot of courage to do it because it's, fucking scary to live your truth sometimes. But I also feel like I can't not.
Yeah, I mean, you got to get out on that tightrope a little bit. You know what I mean? Little by little, step by step. That's the only way you cross that thing is one fucking step at a time. I mean, you need to pause, right? And that's like sort of like how I live my life, right? And I think there is a lot that approach has really worked for me, and it is complex. I'm a complex person too. My parents were like, growing up, we're like, this guy's the fucking Joker. He's thriving in chaos, and he's what we don't know which way he's gonna nightlife, like or podcast, sex podcast, or whatever, right? So I totally understand that, and I think a lot of people feel like you and I, and hopefully they're listening, and maybe they're realizing like, fuck, I'm more like that than I thought, or I just want to put a toe in the water, and I'm going to reach out to Carrie or whatever. And so that's awesome. I love hearing that.
I would love that. And I'll say one other thing is that, my parents got divorced when I was 12 and my father had an affair. Mm-hmm. And this is me rewriting that.
Nice.
Because that exploded my family. It was all lying and cheating. And I have very thankfully healed my relationship with my father. I very consciously, like with a lot of resiliency and persistence, worked on my relationship with my dad. And we're in a great place now. But this was my way of doing it, respecting my husband, respecting our marriage, honoring what we have built. Yeah. And yet also not cutting off feelings and emotions that I have for another person.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, the work is always hard, but on the other side of hard, or even in hard, like we said, there's just a fucking joy and we look at challenges at work, and we look at challenges at building something creative and creating content, creating art. Everything is fucking difficult, and you just have to like really think about what the outcomes could be. And how beautiful if that's something you want. And I love that you just used your dad as an example, right? That's again, you guys fucking did the goddamn work that's hard as fuck, right? And so there's a huge reward on the other side of that.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And I love that we're pressing on that topic because people hopefully will take this into their relationships. So before I do let you go, before I end this episode, before the party is over with Carrie, I have a feeling she'll be back because this is awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about two things. One, and you can take them whatever you want to touch on first. One, your book, because I fucking love the title. And two, your podcast, because holy shit, right? Holy shit. Like, you guys think this episode is great. And please stay here till the end of the episode. Don't run over to her podcast yet. Okay. Not yet. Because we're gonna end this in a spectacular fashion. But I would love to talk about your podcast and your book.
Yeah. Well, on the heels of the conversation with my dad about my dad came that book, which is called Why Did They Always Break Up With Me? And that was my experience. I saw that happen. Now, I didn't know this consciously, but in my subconscious, it was the guy always leaves. And so I kid you not, guy after guy after guy, it was be like, I'm in love with you. And then, no, I need to break up, or I want to break up, or whatever. And I was married to a man for 6 years, and he did the same thing. Now, it was not lying or cheating. There was a part of our relationship that just wasn't working and we just couldn't make it work. And he's like, I think we can do better. But at that point, I was like, shit, the guy always leaves me. And that's when I went into this, what I lead people through in the book is like the exact thing, which is our steps of like acceptance, accepting the feeling, getting to know what is underneath, like what did I take away from that time as core beliefs. Core beliefs, the man always leaves me. And when I worked on shifting those beliefs and coming to a place of forgiveness with my father, everything shifted. I mean, the guys I brought to me, I was the one that left some of the guys, it was like, but the guys were just, the men that were coming into my life after my divorce were very different. They were more heart-centered. They were more conscious. They, were just really good humans, whether the relationship worked out or not. So that book tells the story about that, and also leads people through these steps, these 8 steps to go through this healing process. So that's the book. And then the podcast, Relationship Diversity Podcast. And I would encourage people to start now. I just released my 100th episode.
Congratulations.
So Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's a big deal.
It takes a lot of work to get to 100. You're past that. But starting with episode 1, which really talks about what relationship diversity is and why I think it's so important. And then the first 8 episodes kind of go together of going through the process of understanding what relationship diversity is, exploring diverse relationships. And I go through the diverse relationship structures. I talk about finding the gold within all of the structures. And then I talk about the relationship with self, why it's so important, how to start the relationship with yourself, and then kind of how to put it all together. And then you can also sign up for my newsletter, or if you come on my mailing list, I've got a relationship diversity guide that gets sent right to you. I don't do a ton of emails, but you'll kind of get into a little bit of an email chain to talk more about relationship diversity. And then there are so many episodes. It's like just search kind of through the catalog and see what resonates.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys are looking at this episode and like, this is really fucking good, then after you're done with this, trust me, go over to her podcast, because they're like, some of them are more bite-sized, some of them are longer, and I think that helps people sort of consume, right? It's so valuable on this kind of stuff. It's like one of the top 5, I would say personally at this point, podcasts that I've seen that I've been like, oh shit, this is like really helping people, right? So, no, I fucking love that. Yeah. Carrie Jeroslow, thank you so much for being here with me on Sex Party. It's been a fucking pleasure and honor. I love everything we talked about. Let's tell these party goers where they can find you on social, where they can find your podcast, where they can buy the book, where they can just, I think some of them are desperate to probably work with you. So where can they just come and you can help them?
Totally. Well, I go to relationshipdiversitypodcast.com. That is going to tell you about the podcast. If you go all the way down to the bottom, then you can look at my sessions. And, I'm doing that very particularly. I don't take on a lot of clients. I like to work very specifically with people. I work on the energetic level, actually. So I work with shifting beliefs. That is the power, I think, of the work that I do. But go there. You can also find me on Instagram. It's Carrie_Jeroslow_author_coach. I'm on YouTube as well under my name or Relationship Diversity, and TikTok. And I don't do Facebook. Don't come find me there, because I don't do that.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated over there. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'd love to have you back. We'll have to figure that out once we disconnect here.
Anytime.
No, you're awesome. And I think, what a fucking valuable, fun episode. We somehow this is what I love doing, taking complex, difficult things and, making them fun. So you're really, really great at that. And so I thank you so much. And we will talk very, very soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Dustin.
Big thank you to my guest this week, Carrie Jeroslow, for coming on Sex Party and having an awesome, beautiful, fun, super fun, right? Episode with me. Go follow Carrie on Instagram. Go follow her on TikTok. Go subscribe to her on YouTube. Work with her, right? Listen to her podcast. I'm telling you, her podcast is fucking amazing. You guys will totally thank me later. If you love guests like Carrie, she'll be coming back at some point in the future. But you're just like, you're horny for Sex Party. You love this podcast. What can you do to show that love, that horniness, that appreciation, that desire for more, and to make sure you never miss any Sex Party, because there's a lot of it, right? If you're listening to this on platforms like Apple and Spotify, you could leave a rating, you could leave a review. Those things are awesome. I appreciate it. But listen, fuck all that, right? What you really want to do is you want to make sure that you're subscribed so you never miss a new episode every single Wednesday, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcast has, for some reason, stopped people from subscribing or removed subscribers. So if you're not sure if you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Sex Party with Dustin Rybka, upper right-hand corner. You want to tap that little icon and see if you're subscribed. It'll either say resume subscription or resume downloads or whatever. You want to press whatever until you see a check mark. When you see a check mark, congrats, you have resubscribed. If you're watching on YouTube, have you ever thought about being in a relationship with more than one partner, whether that's sexually, emotionally, whatever? Let me know in the comments. Also, YouTube, bonus question. If you had to choose one food for the rest of your life, would you choose between peanut butter or pickles? I love you. I see you guys on YouTube. If you're on YouTube and you're wondering how you can show some love, appreciation, desire for this show, well, again, right, you could subscribe to the channel. That's the most goddamn important. I love when you like stuff. I love when you comment, but I want to make sure that you subscribe to the channel, because that way you never miss a new episode every single Wednesday. As always, I'm available in the DMs on Instagram, and I will see you all right back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at Sex Party FM. Follow Dustin at Dustin Rybka.